Hello and welcome to today's video. So this is book hunting in Newcastle and the surrounding area. And I was up in Newcastle for a few days, and I've not been up that part of the UK for a long time, so I thought I'd have a good look around. And I started off in the local pannier market, and there was a shop there, a comic book shop and graphic novels, Universal Export, and it's run by a chap called Scott, who's been doing it for many years now. There was one other shop in a corner of the market, quite small, but they did a lot of TV and film memorabilia. They had some signed stuff. That's a really nice memorabilia, in fact. However, I went in and asked the chap behind the counter if I could film, and he said there's not a lot of points since I'm wrapping it up within the next 12 months, so I didn't bother. But I did have a little look around, and it's a shame because it has some good stuff. So as we speak now, in November 2025, there is actually two shops there, but potentially it will be going down to just the one. I did ask Scott about if there were any other like second-hand bookshops anywhere in Newcastle, and he said there was one other in the market up until about a year ago when they shut down. So that is it now. So you've got a big Waterstones and you've got a couple of smaller independents. There is a Forbidden Planet in town. Obviously they're all new books, and this is pretty much it. Now when I got there, Scott was really busy. He had a box of vintage Amazing Spider-Mans that he was going through with a customer. They bought one there. I spotted it was, I think, about £40 for one in the 60s. Very nice condition copies they were as well. The high grade run that he had. As you can see, the place is absolutely rammed, and Scott said he is looking for bigger premises, hopefully next year. He had a run of DC horror and mystery titles in, so Witching Hour, House of Secrets, House of Mystery. As you can see there, a few nice ones in nice condition as well. And most books have got the price right on the front of the bag there. But yeah, lots of graphic novels as well as original copies, which reflects the way people read comics these days. He had a very nice 100-pager there for the House of Mystery. That was sadly £125 for that slabbed one, which I'm not a massive fan of slabbing, even if it's a nice copy. I like to be able to get the book out and read it, should I want to, rather than have it slabbed up. And here's a few of his special issues. House of Secrets 92 there, Spidey 3. I mean, loads of them. Spidey 129, First Punisher. There's a Hulk 181. There's an Avengers one there on the wall. There was loads of rare ones there amongst his inventory. Some of the more modern Spider-Mans as well. Iron Man 1. So some good stuff there. Very early Ghost Rider. So yeah, very cool. Very cool indeed. Nice to see. And we ended up chatting for quite some time because he's about my age, and we were chatting about the old days of comic book collecting. He's a big Spider-Man collector himself. He said he's got 2 copies of Amazing Fantasy 15, a pence and a cents. And he, like me, can remember when they were very, very cheap, just a few £100 or less if you got lucky. I can remember being at a show with my business partner George in about 87. And we were at a London comic market going through a box just like I'm flicking through these, and there was 2 or 3 copies of Amazing Fantasy 15 at £150. You won't get one for that money nowadays. Yeah, a general cross-section of the sort of more typical back issues that you would find. But as I said, Scott's really struggling for space, and he says the sooner he finds a bigger premises, the easier it'll be for him and his customers. And some of the Dark Horse Star Wars there in the Marvel run. Still quite popular in the world of comics is Star Wars. So yes, good stuff. So not a lot else to see in Newcastle, so off I went to Whitley Bay the following morning, and I knew that there was 1 or 2 charity shops worth a look, and here's the first one I went into. And this is like a YMCA charity shop. A bit hit or miss, these can be. There was another one just down the road, which I didn't film in, but all their paperbacks, in fact, all their books across the board were 10p a book. I picked up this Hornblower box set because the actual slipcase itself was in particularly nice condition. The books were obviously, quite well worn, but I've got that set, but just not in that condition. St. Oswald's Hospice this is opposite like a regular St. Oswald's charity shop, but they just do books inside this one. And I did make a beeline for their sort of rarities shelf, which is what we're looking at here. And they even had a few vintage paperbacks. And their paperbacks were all £1.75 each, which doesn't seem too bad, in all honesty. They haven't got a lot there, sadly. The choice wasn't massive. But I did pick up a few. And everything that I bought on the trip, I will show you at the end in a little pickups segment, which will only be like 10 minutes. You can see what I actually bought at the end. But some good stuff there. They even let me, I asked if they had any more vintage paperbacks out the back, and they let me go and have a look. Apart from some penguins, which I already had, there was nothing else for me, sadly. But quite nice to see. The prices weren't over the top. The place was full up and packed at the back as well. So, what's the point of overcharging? Get it cheap and get it out the door. That's my motto. And then the first proper bookshop, Kilrow Books, and I was very much looking forward to visiting. And I did film the window. It was a bit. This is early in the morning, so the sunlight was reflecting onto the windows there, onto the glass. But I think you get an idea of what was there. I'd gone in beforehand and I'd spoken to the one of the owners, and they were very, very friendly, more than happy for me to go ahead and film. So thank you for that. And we have a really good look around this excellent bookshop. I bought quite a bit from here, and I was very impressed. The only slight problem was I was a little bit pushed for time because I wanted to drive up to Barter Books, and there was one other one in Whitley Bay called Oliver's Books, but sadly I sort of ran out of time, and a few people had told me that Oliver's Books doesn't really keep very strict opening hours, so there was a chance he wasn't even going to be open at all. So I decided to cut my losses, get back to the car, and off I went to Barter Books, but not before I spent about an hour here in Kilrow Books, and I could have easily spent a bit longer. So I'm doing an Alfred Hitchcock cameo there. Not intentional, it's just the glass, the reflection. I think probably because this is like a week or two after Halloween, there was a few sort of horror-related books in the window, including that very nice Fontana slipcase set. Now, they had 40 on that, and on reflection, that probably wasn't a bad price, because you don't come across them very often. So here we are inside, and I wouldn't say it's your typical second-hand bookshop, but I would say it was nicely laid out. Everything was A to Z, and the prices, I think, were either going rate or slightly below going rate. So no gouging that I could see. I thought it was all right, Now, I was attracted to that one, and that is a good price, £25 for Third Girl, which is a title that I collect by Christie as like a focus collector. So I collect all the different editions of Third Girl, and that is the genuine UK first. So it's one I'm after. So I was umming and ahhing about that. I wish I had a look through that one, illustrated by Rockwell Kent, because I like his illustrations as well. But yes, all manner of stuff. There was some nice display cases, which we'll have a look at in a minute, but this is sort of the poetry bit. And what some people do on these sorts of videos is just pause, so you can have a look at the shelf before I move on. I've tried to film it as steadily as I can. Kilrow Books obviously are very contactable. They've got their own website, kilrowbooks.com. I believe they're on ABE. They do the main book fairs as well. And you can also just give them a call. They're on Instagram. And so they're on social media. And well, you can see the quality of their stuff, and it's on 2 floors. So hardbacks and antiquarian downstairs and rare first editions, and then upstairs we've got the paperback section, which was also well worth a look, with a surprising amount of vintage penguins, far more than I expected to find. There's a little taste of some of their fine bindings. Cider with Rosie, first edition, 65 is a pretty good price for that one. I always have horrific flashbacks because it's the one I studied for O-level literature, so I will never, ever read it again. Just saying. Yeah, nice art section there. And then Folio Society, well, it spilled over right into the window, and then you had 2 double bays right floor to ceiling of it. And I'd say what it was short of, and what you see most of when you finally come across Folio Society and bookshops, is you tend to see like the historical ones. You don't tend to come across much in the way of fiction, and then particularly the modern fiction, which is what they've been concentrating on the last sort of 30 years or so. There was a bit of it there. There was a bit of it there, and there was a couple I was sorely tempted with, which we'll see. I did end up buying one, which I've been after, but there was others there, and if they'd been slightly cheaper, just slightly cheaper, I think I might have pulled the trigger. But there you go. Can't have it all. Books about books. I love books about books. Although that one I did leave behind. That was not, didn't appeal, that particular one. But yes, a very nice Folio Society section. A couple of bays. And then this is the fiction A to Z first editions and collectible editions. The Flemings there, those are pretty much all later reprints. They did have a range of firsts in a display cabinet, which we'll have a look at in a minute. So these are nice, if you just want them in hardback with the original jackets, although Casino Royale, that's the reissue jacket. It's a cheap way of getting them, and then they had a few book clubs next to it. That's a great book. That's the second printing with a slightly different cover to the first. I recommend this book. It's fantastic. I've got a copy myself, so I didn't bother picking it up, but for £8 that wasn't a bad price. It sort of goes for about 15. Dr. No, that was the first pan with a PEF cover. 30, that's about right. Maybe slightly above for one with a creased spine. And there's some of the John Gardners. And well, as you can see, authors A to Z, modern firsts. I see they have the Claudius books there without wrappers. I wonder how much they were priced at. Some Glance yellow jackets in hardback. You don't often see those. Some Bob Shaws there, and then a little stack of Philip K. Dick caught my attention. Some John Christopher, Pratchett's, Brian Lumley. Shelf of Tolkien, including the Folio Society set. So nice run of Edgar Rice Burroughs. Some of those nice Samson Lows. I missed those as well. I probably would have had a closer look at them. Patrick White. There's some good stuff there, isn't there? I said a lot of this is on their website anyway. I have looked a few bits up since I've come back, and when I was editing the video I thought, I wonder how much that was and this was. Lovely run of Iris Murdoch. I think they've had a collection in. They had some really early ones signed on their website, but it looks as if they've sold now. Her early jackets are designed by Edward Baldwin, who I particularly like. Here's those Philip K. Dicks. I didn't quite capture them all in, but they were £10 or £12 each. These across the board, which isn't bad, I suppose, if they're ones that you need. I just sort of checked them out. They're slightly later Ace editions than the ones I've got. I've got the 50s and early 60s ones. These are slightly mid to late 1960s, which are less appealing to me. I don't think the covers are so good. And I do have the British editions of these, so I wasn't too fussed about them. But yeah, 10 to 12 each, reasonable condition copies. Here's one of their display cases with the rarer books in, signed editions, more expensive firsts, that sort of thing. Some interesting stuff in there. The folio June. That was the Pauline Baines first puffin edition of The Hobbit. I don't know what was on that particular one. The Diamond Smugglers. Anyway, a nice original June Messiah there. A Glance. I Am Legend. Yep, some interesting stuff. All of this is on their website. That's particularly nice, that First of the Wolves of Willoughby Chase. Love that jacket as well. Yes. Very nice. A copy of The Bell there. And a few Flemings. We tend to see the tail end ones quite often, don't we? On our trips. And here's some of the other sort of sections. This is more, I think, sort of local interest. So Newcastle and the surrounding area. So from Newcastle, Whitley Bay is about 30 to 35 minutes away by road. Just a straight run. Whitley Bay itself, I was able to find some free parking sort of behind the shops. There was room for about 100 cars, and you could park for free for 2 hours, which is exactly what I did. Else there's a multi-storey there you can pull into. I think because it's by the sea, if you go at the height of tourist season, you're going to struggle. A midweek day in November, no problem at all. And as I said, I was there really early. I was there just after Kilrow had opened, although there was people inside, straight away. So there may have been people waiting to get in outside. But you can see there's so much there to have a look at. An incredible run there of the Buildings of England in hardback. Pevsner's Buildings of England, an incredible series that. I am missing about 4 of those, and then I'm going to try and do a video showcasing the series before they go into storage. Yeah, some nice early travel, which I do find fascinating. You got to draw the line somewhere. I've got a little bit of it from my favourite writers, but it's a huge subject. Some more collectible children's books, some Beanos, Black Bob Annuals, some early Ruperts, that sort of thing. Stuff you'll be familiar with, I'm sure. Some of the more famous authors there. Some W.E. Johns. All good stuff. Children's collectible. And this is moving more into the history and military history, which I certainly do enjoy collecting. It's generally not too expensive as well. At least the authors that that I'm after. I just find some of them are particularly tricky to get. I'm still struggling to find a first print of Stalingrad in hardback by Anthony Beevor. You come across the paperback all the time, but I can't find the hardback. One of the New Naturalists there. You tend to find some in every single second-hand bookshop, and it's a great series. I mean, quite rightly, they're fantastic. Very, very nice. Yeah, Badminton Library, a little bit of sport, fishing. You get the idea. Transport. You know, I certainly had to pick my moment, because even though it was quite early in the morning, there was quite a few people there shopping. And I think there was a couple of regulars. They knew them by their first names, so I guess regulars. And to be honest, if I had a shop like this on my doorstep, I'd probably be there quite often. Alas, it's over 600 miles from where I live, so it's hardly somewhere you can just nip to in an afternoon, sadly. Some Churchill there. Yes, some Beaver. So yeah, if anyone's got Stalingrad in a hardback first by Anthony Beaver, do drop me a line, because it's one I am looking for. Okay, so once again, like a lot of second-hand bookshops, they do have a little bit of ephemera, postcards and what have you. These are some of the Frederick Warren sections. They got the observers down the bottom, but quality observers, not just the run-of-the-mill tat. You can see that they're nice early editions. And a few more nice, more expensive books behind glass. And a ladder to get to a little bit more antiquarian and fine bindings, which has never appealed to me, but I do understand the attraction of them, but they're not my thing. A little bit of witchcraft, which is always a popular subject, isn't it? Witchcraft, the occult, in any form. This is a little section on books about books. Once again, a real passion of mine. I love books about books, and there was a few here that I hadn't seen before. Yes, chapbooks of the 18th century. I bet that was interesting. I wish I'd had a look at that one now, but hobbies and collectibles. Some photography by the window here. And I'm thinking it's about time to head upstairs. So that's stuff that's just come in. A few Christie facsimiles there. A very nice Italian, I believe, poster for Get Carter. And this is upstairs, which is predominantly paperbacks, but nicely arranged. And I had quite the surprise when I got over to their back wall and I saw their penguin section. because I wasn't expecting this. And I suspect, because there was a couple of books there from the Penguin Collectors Society, that they probably ended up buying quite a big collection off an ex-society member, which is why they've got so much. And that's evidently like the basis of their stock. I did go through every single shelf with a fine-tooth comb, and I think it had already been well picked over, because there was no wartime firsts to be had, not even in the fiction, because that is by far the scarcest little period. To be honest, there was a couple of reprints that were more of interest to me, but I decided, I've got some other stuff to sort out still, so I didn't bother with them. But that was more of interest to me than the firsts per se. But they weren't mega money by any means. A nice run of classics across the board there, including the later black classics. And there is a few Everymans that have slipped in on the shelf. And they had a little run of Penguin specials as well. More classics and a few Bond books. And you can see by the fireplace there that I guess this is a converted house at one point that's been made into the retail premises. Obviously, the more run-of-the-mill second-hand books end up here, and cheap reading. But interspersed is the older book, the older sort of collectible title. The lower condition, lower grade hardback fiction is also up here as well. So lots of these here are not the first, or they are the first, but they're in low condition, they're low grade. So they're cheap and cheerful. The good stuff is definitely kept downstairs in that regard. Some biographies and autobiographies. Predominantly literary people. This is a little bit of the science fiction overflow. They did have quite a bit there, and it was still sort of the £3 to £4 to £5 price bracket. Not massive vintage, but there was some, and plenty to see, as you can see. They did have a children's section up here as well for kids' books. These are for the less collectible children's titles. I don't think I saw any Doctor Who up here at all. A little run of Puffin storybooks. The old Peacock there as well. Once again, nothing that really sort of jumped out at me, nothing that I needed myself. Children's annuals, copies of the Eagle. I mean, a good sort of mixture, really. And a little bit of crime hardbacks. Then they have that little end case, which was full of pans, vintage pan, which is quite nice to see. I did end up going through the cabinet that bookcase because they were only £2, £3 or £4 a piece, and some of them jumped out at me as being in really nice condition. So I picked up some nice ones, which we'll have a look at in a minute, with a view to upgrading them. And I found one I didn't have at all, a grate pan that I was missing. So that was good news. So I actually found a pan I didn't have. But yeah, so Kilrow Books, definitely, they say Tyneside leading bookshop, and they are right. There is nothing quite like it in the area. And so just go to kilrowbooks.com. and you can find most of their stuff, and it's got how to contact them. So if you've seen something in the video that you think, oh, I wouldn't mind that, just give them a call. Go to the website, give them a call. There'll be links down below anyway in the description, so you can go straight there and give them a shout and say you saw in Jules's video. But at the back of my mind, I knew I couldn't stay here much longer, because I had to jump in the car. I had to walk back to the car first of all, and I decided to give Oliver's books a miss because of the uncertainty that it'll even be open, and also time was marching on. I had to jump back in the car and drive for about 40 minutes north to Barter Books. And Barter Books is in an area called Alnwick, but it's not pronounced Alnwick. It's Alnwick, I think, is how it's pronounced. And it's 35 miles from Newcastle and about 80 miles away from Edinburgh. So that gives you an idea of where I was heading. As we have the last little look at Kilrow Books, which was, I kid you not, definitely worth making a special trip for. As you can see, there was plenty there. There really was. And hopefully I'll be able to get back there soon again, because it should be on your radar, that one. So here we are at Barter Books. So I've driven up the road for my 40 minutes or so, and it was very easy to get to. There's free parking outside, but it was packed. It was packed. I just found a spot to get into. It was busy. People were turning up in taxis, waiting for taxis to go. They have a cafe which was full, and had people waiting to get in. So evidently it's a popular little location. Now you can get to Barter Books via railway. It's on the East Coast Main Line, and it's at Alnwick Station. And you can also get there by bus as well. And they stop right outside the shop. So this is just inside the door. And they've got these display cases dotted throughout the shop. But the whole building is a listed Victorian railway station. And it really feels like it as well. And there's some nice little architectural points which we'll point out as we look round. There is also a railway set going around. Now, they had some vintage penguins there, and as you can see, the prices were quite, I would say they weren't cheap. I don't know if this reflects their clientele, but they had very, I mean, those two penguin crines was pretty much it. So whether they've just got a huge market for it and nothing stays in stock, I really don't know, because I've got several thousand here in my studio, which if I could get that sort of money for them, I'd probably be retiring, to be honest, you know. But there you go. Price-wise, well, we'll see a few examples as we have a little look around, and make up your own mind. I think it's a reflection of the clientele, which, as I said, I went midweek. It was sort of around lunchtime by the time I got there. There were, I would say, lots of retired people visiting, but they were busy. And there was people paying for books all the time. There's a little bit of an extensive railway set, which is in the first sort of section of the shop. The noise, it's actually quite noisy. I don't know what gauge that is, but it's quite a noisy railway set. I guess you just sort of get used to it, but quite a nice little gimmick, and accentuating the railway connections. I don't think, even in Hay-on-Wye, I don't think I've been in a bookshop quite as big as this for secondhand. I'm not sure, maybe the cinema bookshop in Hay-on-Wye might just touch it. But it was fairly clearly laid out. I hear that they don't particularly buy books per se for cash. They rather prefer to trade. So you might get a generous trade offer, and maybe that covers the price of the second-hand books. But we'll just have a little look around. I mean, you're seeing it as I was seeing it. I'd never been here before, so I didn't know what to expect. But it was busy pretty much most of the time I was there. As I said, particularly the cafe part. So evidently they do good food. In fact, whilst I was filming, someone came out and said, "Oh, are you waiting to have something to eat because there's like a queuing system?" I said, "Nah, I'm just filming." I did ask for their permission, and once again, Barter Books were more than happy for me to go in and film. So thank you very much for that. And whatever you think about the pricing, all the prices that you see, if you're into second-hand books or collecting old books, it's a real eye-opener. And an experience, you could say, just to say you've been there. It's certainly one of the biggest and most well-known in the UK. So being this close, I definitely didn't want to not visit. I see a fair bit of Folio Society stuff in there at normal A to Z. But the expensive books are obviously in some of the many cabinets, which we'll have a look at in a minute, and they go right round the outside of the shop. So another load of folio trollops. Lots of stuff. And this is like their less expensive first editions and modern firsts. Quite a bit of children's stuff, as you would expect, and there's a separate section as well with like the more run-of-the-mill stuff like Mr. Men and Ladybird books and things like that, dotted around the store, in fact. But there is a section fairly near the front of the shop, which is quite good thinking when you think about it for parents with young children. Some very vintage children's books there, which I love, but they're very quaint, shall we say. Here is the dedicated kids section. Plenty of seating and cushions and that dotted around throughout the shop, which is also really good. You feel you could sort of go in and relax. In fact, there was a roaring fire just inside the door with chairs in front of it. So this obviously attracted my attention. A bit of genre fiction here. Guy and Smith, we know how collectible he is. So Locusts, £15.60. Make of that what you will. Not quite sure how they came at that price, but there you go. A bit of poetry there. Now here's an example of the display cases, and we'll work our way around them. And the shop does go off into the distance. as you can see. Give you an idea of just the sheer size of the place. I thought, blimmin' heck, how am I going to get through all this? So I don't go over every single shelf. I'll just let you know. But we do have a good look at the best of it. And I assume you just make a note of the case number if you see something that you actually want, and then nip off to find a member of staff to get it out for you. It didn't appear as if they had any books actually in the cafe/restaurant bit, but this is just outside. It's signed copies, of which there was loads dotted around all over the place. Yeah, the cafe was in the old waiting room, is what it says. There we are. I said it was full up. It was full up when I was there. Obviously a bit of transport in the shop because it's of interest to railway enthusiasts to see the old station. And right next door to that, that's where the toilets were. And even that had an interesting bit of history to it, which we'll have a look at in a bit. More signed books. Yeah, military history. You can see. And I do like the fact that you can, at a glance, see how much the books are. You don't need to ask. Almost everything is visible, from looking at the cabinet. So it gives you an idea. They got some very expensive books there. Look at that one there, 1,550. The Great Boer War by Conan Doyle. I mean, I've got no idea if that's the going rate. It seems steep to me, but I don't know for the one book. I'll give you an example of the sort of decor you're likely to find in Barter Books. A preserved water fountain there. Some early Surtees. Science and technology. And these are, once again, they're slightly more collectible Folio Society books. A couple of early ones there in dust wrappers, so they sort of know their stuff. But once again, I thought the pricing was either going rate or slightly above the going rate, so I didn't end up picking anything up there. But it was there if you wanted it. And a little bit of stationery and sort of the out of copyright editions. And this was the collectible penguin section. and these are all £8 to £12 per book. A few children's annuals. Some of the earlier ones, even a few collectible comics there. The detective there is the first Silver Age Batgirl, which is quite a collectible title. Couldn't see anything else that was of interest, but that one definitely is collectible. Sort of another tail end here with Hardy Boys and Alfred Hitchcock. Some kids series Nancy Drew. Not quite sure what bound means. I really don't. What does that mean? Not come across that before. Omnibuses, bound volumes of editions, maybe. British history and topography. And plenty of staff there, and they were often going around putting new stock out. Certain areas needed a bit of merchandising. Certainly compared to Kilrow Books, where I'd just come from, where everything was so immaculate. But they're so busy, you know. I mean, I wasn't surprised, really. But it's nice to see, as you can see, all the chairs and that around, so you could pick up a few books, have a sit down and have a proper look through, make sure it's something that you really wanted. And I do like that. That's how bookshops should be, if you've got the room, of course. A few more hardback firsts and early editions. Dennis Wheatley there. Unica Sambo for £3.60 for the first. Some Evelyn Waughs there, all a few £100 each. Creature from the Black Lagoon, £3.80 with no dust wrapper. And some of the Henry Williamson series, which I've read the first couple. I really enjoyed them, but those are a bit steep for me. They're not uncommon. They do turn up quite a bit once you've got the first two out of the way, which I have. So the later ones are no more than 20, 25. Bit of historical romance there, the old White Oak saga. Reference. As you can see, I mean, if you're looking for books, there's probably going to be a lot there. And we're on to the last sort of stretch now with these, and certainly the place is not short of collectible books. I think if you really were looking for something in particular, you could probably find it at Barter Books at a price. But I can see people sort of going there as a bit of a destination and spending a couple of hours maybe getting a bite to eat at the same time. It just sort of strikes me as that sort of place, you know? Which is absolutely fine. And it may be one of those cases where you sort of need to go in quite a bit if you live local and be ready to pounce if certain things turn up. But I didn't really notice anything that was a bargain, because I would have pointed it out, and I just didn't really see any bargains there. and private presses. Some very nice stuff there. Yeah, so drama and music, so a few rock and pop things. Odd King Penguin there. And more collectible poetry. It is surprisingly a collectible subject. So if you're into it, you're really into it. And there are some scarce editions out there, certainly. This is going back down the other side now, just to give you a little idea of what the place is like. But you can see all the steps at the end of every single row, so if you can't quite reach, there's the steps there for you to reach those higher shelves. Once again, a run of New Naturalists. Some early ones, and some of the later re-releases. I think some of them, the scarcest ones, have been reprinted now. So I think you can just about get them all if you wanted to. If you've got the space, that's the biggest issue. Arts. And then even cookery. Underneath you see we've got some science fiction and fantasy. And once again I was drawn to Philip K. Dick. That was an early glance. VGSF one. £9.60 on that. Then a Panther, a more famous cover, £24 on that one. For Flow My Tears, the policeman said. And we'll leave it at that. Cookery, Bernard Shaw there, the plays. Bit more run-of-the-mill SF and fantasy there. Then some in hardback. But all I can think of with the pricing is it's just a reflection of their clientele more than anything else. They must have the people there who can afford these prices, and maybe that's just the going rate in that area. And I would imagine with all the staff and the size of the place, it can't be cheap to maintain as a business. They do have a website, barterbooks.co.uk. And as I said, it is a destination. It is as simple as that. You know, if you're in the area and you like books, you're definitely going to want to stop in because there is a lot to see. They say there's over 350,000 second-hand books in stock. And I think in the summer they do a Paradise Ice Cream Parlour. As I said, free parking, which is good, right outside, which is once again another reason why it probably does so well. Now, this is also a claim to fame. So in 2000, this poster, the famous Keep Calm and Carry On poster, was discovered during a renovation. And obviously it then became very, very big in the year 2000. So there you go. The copy that became big came from Barter Books. Can you believe it? And there it is, the original one. So here's the children's fiction now. Some of the slightly older titles and some of the collectible titles as well. Ladybird book, they're £9.60 to £48 was the range in prices there. Certainly what to look for in summer was no more than 15, even for a beautiful first, so not quite sure what's happening there. Some of the other books, and it's lovely to have your books in cabinets like this, particularly if you've got the space. It's fantastic. But not many of us have that luxury. That's the problem. Some more collectible Observer books there. Some vintage kids fiction. And some nice illustrated as well. They also had some comics and children's annuals of varying vintages. Comics back to the 60s, up to the 90s. And then some sports stuff, some early Wisdens, golf books. Fishing. Sports and pursuits. And the more vintage kids stuff as well. Little run of Wisdens there. And I think, you just need to get an idea of the sheer scale of the place, Really quite something. But I think we've had a look at the, the collectible stuff, the more interesting stuff, shall we say. This is literally walking through the shop in the centre here. They've got these chairs, and sort of acts as like a centre point, and you can go off in different directions depending on what you're looking for. Yes, quite the experience, I think you could say. Old Barter Books. And that's another way into the old waiting room, which is the restaurant part. We've got books and book collecting and just general collecting here. Once again, I always check those sections out, although there was nothing that I particularly wanted this time round. But yeah, Barter Books, certainly somewhere I think you should go to if you're in the area, just to say you've been, even if you don't buy anything. Just as an experience for a bookshop, if you're a book lover, it's the sort of place that should be on your radar. And I'm glad I went. Okay, so here's a quick look at the books that I bought on my trip. So in the charity shop, I picked up a couple of those cheap £1.75 vintage paperbacks. This was an odd corgi that I didn't have from 1961. Quite a nice jacket on that particular one. And a rare sighting, particularly in the UK, a Dell Mapback, and not in the greatest of condition, but it's one I haven't got. It's a slightly later one, number 369, but it has got the beautiful map on the back, which I really like. But yeah, 175, Oswald's charity shop. You can't really beat that. And yeah, I was more than happy to pay that. So quite nice, but not that collectible, the author, but still a nice book to have. How often do you come across Dell Mapbacks in the UK? Also in the charity shop, I think this is the WCA or YMCA, I got this Hornblower box set. This one in the end cost me £3.50. He did it by 50p per book. Obviously I've got all the books, but it's the box set itself. So I have got this box set, but mine is split and it's faded on one edge, and this is a particularly nice one. So I'm going to keep the books as reading copies, and I'm going to swap it out for this really nice slipcase, which is completely undamaged. So that to me was worth £3.50. We then move on to Kilrow Books. So there they were just down the road, and there's their flyer. Fantastic antiquarian and second-hand bookshop. Really good stuff there. They've got a great website, which I have had a look at, so worth checking that one out. So starting off upstairs with the paperbacks then. So these were also, well, there were various prices really, at like £3. They were all pretty nice condition, and you saw the Palm bookcase in the video, and I've either picked them up because there were ones I didn't have, like that one I didn't have at all, or ones like this which I've got but perhaps not in such nice shape, and that's why I've picked them up. So what do they have on that? Well, 50p. I'm sure it was like £2 or £3 per book. It's another really nice one. Yeah, that one had £3 on, and a sapper there. Once again, another really quite nice condition, not perfect but pretty nice. For the money, and that one was £2. So a few nice vintage paperbacks from the upstairs bit of Kilrow Books. So a few there to look at and compare in my collection. Downstairs I picked up that Agatha Christie Third Girl. This is the first printing. It was £25, but it's a late 60s one, so that is cheaper than what it generally goes for. It needs a bit of a clean, to be honest. There's some dirt in the rails. 1966. It's not particularly difficult to get, but they tend to sell for, I've seen them up to 100, to be honest. But it is the first print. As I said, it's not perfect. It needs a little bit of a clean, and there's a couple of little tiny tears at the top and bottom of the spine. I don't collect Christie in hardback first edition, but I collect the Third Girl as a like a focus title. So I collect all the different editions of it. There's a lot of really funky ones that have been published over the years. So that's one of the ones I do. So I wanted to get the first of that. Also downstairs from their folio selection, I picked up Gulliver's Travels. Now, Gulliver's Travels was published by the Folio Society in 1949. At the time, the Folio Society had only just started, so they didn't have enough money to do the complete voyages of Gulliver, but they do in this one. So this was 10, but this is the 1965, the complete edition, illustrated by Edward Baldwin, who I absolutely love. So this is the full voyages now, and you'll see the illustrations. I think they're just fantastic. And the original book is, in nice condition. The original Folio Society book, which isn't the complete voyages, is, anything up to £50 for a really tip-top one. This is by far the easiest way to enjoy the pictures and the cheapest, and it's the complete book. And this was only a tenner. I mean, I've been looking for this one on eBay for quite some time, and I just keep finding it in a reprint. In fact, Kilrow Books had this same book again in a reprint form, but I wanted the second release, which is the first time this was published in its entirety. And I shall need to compare the two, but I think there are new additional illustrations by Baldwin added to this one to make the voyages complete. There's a really great one which hopefully I'll be able to find of Gulliver. That's a really good one. There's another one here stepping over the... I can't find it now. One of the ones where he steps over the houses, but as you can see, really great. So I was very pleased to get that particular one. Also downstairs, they had a section which was books about books, and that's always a section or an area of collecting that I particularly like. And they did have one book of interest, which is this one here, front cover. I'd not come across this before. This is a look at jacket front covers with quite an emphasis on penguin as well. This one was a tenner. So it's basically half the cover price, and I'll flick through. I might go through this one in a bit more detail in a future video, but there's quite a bit here, and I like the way that it's done by publisher and or imprint, which particularly appeals to me. Obviously it's only up to the time that it was published, which I think is the late 1990s, But yeah, all the major sort of publishers are there, paperback and hardback, and it does go back in time. Certain authors, like say Christie there, had their own section, and there's a lot that you'll be familiar with in this particular one. I said lots of Penguin content as well. So I think this warrants a much longer look at in my monthly pickups video. So look out for that one in a month or two's time, and we'll have a proper browse through that one, because it's great. I'm just going to have a look to see when it was actually published. 2001. So there we are. So it'll be up to that point. And then the last thing I got was also the most expensive thing I got. I'll keep the price under wraps, but it was not cheap. But they did actually have 2 copies of it, so that was all right. So it's the wood engravings of Robert Gibbons. Now, Robert Gibbons is an artist who I really like. He did quite a bit of work for Penguin. This one came with the original prospectus, and this is an example of his work. He also worked for the Golden Cockerel Press for a while, and I really like his stuff. Now, this one was published in 1957, and Gibbons himself passed away just a couple of years later, in 1959. Actually, that is when he died. So there we go. He was only in his 60s, and it's a chronological catalogue of his major work. Includes stuff from Penguin that he did for Penguin, but not absolutely everything. But you do get a very good feel for his great and exacting style, which I really, really like. Look at that one there for the post office. It's perhaps a lost art, you could say, wood engravings now. I mean, that was also from that's from the Lost Anchor. That he did a Penguin special, which was published as a Pelican special, and it was called Blue Angels and Whales, and that's perhaps my all-time favourite book by him. But I have a few, and this is what he did for the Golden Cockerel Press, Gloria Life. Highly, highly collectible title from them, perhaps one of the most collectible of all. And you can see why with the amazing illustrations. So yes, so I splashed out a little bit on this one. You can guess how much it was. Answers on a postcard. But it was the first print, and I was very pleased to have it. And as I said, amazingly, they had 2 copies in there. So I picked out the best one because they were the same price, and grabbed it. So yeah, Kilrow Books, absolutely excellent. And then I finished off my trip, as you saw, with Barter Books, which sadly I didn't find anything there that I particularly wanted to buy at the prices that they had. But it's an incredible place, and well, it's definitely worth a visit if you're anywhere nearby. Yeah, sadly there was nothing there for me. Anyway, there you go. So that was my my look around Newcastle, such as it was, and Whitley Bay, and the bookshops nearby. I had a good time. Certainly hope you enjoyed the videos, which were it took a bit of time to pull together all that footage, but it was great fun. If you have enjoyed today's video, of course, do please give it the thumbs up. Do please hit that subscribe button if you've not already for regular vintage book content. And I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.